Hi, everybody. Welcome to another great conversation about raising creative kids. Here's what's happening on the farm. It is the beginning of December, and I think we're going to get our first snowflakes on Wednesday. I guess we'll see. I always love the first snow, and especially if it's that kind of snow that comes down in those big, fluffy flakes. We have had some sleet around here already, but not that really pretty, gently falling, big, flaky snow. I don't think it's supposed to stick on the ground, at least not on paved surfaces. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Everybody is doing really well as far as the chickens and the goats and the sheep and the dogs. We're just moving right along into winter and into winter mode, feeding more hay, feeding some grain, because the grasses are dying off. But that's all part of the seasons of life, right? So far in this season 3, all about creativity, we've talked about how creativity it's really a human right or a human need. Making with our hands and our hearts and our minds is something that I think all human beings can do, and all human beings crave it to a certain extent. I think that many people have cut themselves off from their creativity, whether that's because they received some judgment from someone along the line, or they don't feel like they have the time. But it is something, creativity, I think, brings joy back into our lives. So that's what my goal for this season is, to help people strengthen their creative spirit, help them find it, help them exercise it, and so to therefore become more fully creative in their world. And have you done any of the exercises yet? Each session, I've been giving you a small exercise to do, and I hope that you will share those at some point. You can always hashtag me or tag me in a post. I'd love to see what you're doing. So today, like I said, we are continuing our talk about the creative journey, and talking about raising creative kids. So today I talk with Annie Marshall. She's the owner and founder of Veggie Annie's Catering. I've known Annie for quite a few years. I think I want to say 13 or 14 years, something like that. And while we don't see each other very often, we always love our time together. She's such a great, positive person, and I just love talking with her and having time to do that. And she has raised one awesome creative daughter, and so I wanted to hear all about that. Here's our conversation. Hi, Annie. How are you today?
Hi, Lisa. I'm terrific. Thank you for asking me to come talk to you.
Well, I'm so excited about this. As we were talking a little bit before I started the recording, is that I've known Annie, we think, for like 13, 14 years, and her lovely daughter, Juliana, and just people that I've asked to be on this podcast have raised wonderful kids who are creative and are just great for their community and really engaged. And so I wanted to tap into your knowledge about what you did to create such a great kid.
Oh, what a kind thing to say. Thanks. I'm definitely, the president of her fan club. So
yeah. And Juliana does, she knits and she creates her own patterns. That's what, and she's running for city council, county council.
Yep. County council. Yep.
Yeah. So
she's also a blacksmith,
right,
and many other creative,
and dancer,
creative venues. Yep. Yeah, she does a lot.
She does. She's out there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so I think, talking to everybody that I've invited on this part of this mini series of this podcast, is I think we all agree that creativity is innate in children, that children are curious, They are, constantly engaging with their environment, getting to know things, wanting to do things with their hands, and that we have to find ways to foster that creativity and not, as you said, not to crush it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think that I feel like with Juliana, she came great, and it was kind of my job not to, mess that up.
And she was really involved in a certain movie, correct?
What movie?
The Brigadoon, that she was like,
with That's true. That's true. She would dance. Oh, it was the purest form of art I've ever seen. She didn't have any, it wasn't for anyone but herself. She would dance around. Sometimes she would say to me, Mommy, I'll be Gene Kelly and you be Sid Charisse, okay? And she would dance around and act out, sing and dance and the parts from Brigadoon. And so sometimes it was with me, but a lot of times it was by herself, and it wasn't for anyone. It was really just for her own pleasure. She wasn't performing. She was, performing for someone. It was just, she was just experiencing it, which was really cool. That was a very cool thing to watch on the sly. I didn't want to make her self-conscious. But that was very neat. I think that's a developmental stage in children from what I understand. In children's art, that there is a period, a developmental period, maybe around 3, although I could be mistaken about that, when they're just experiencing art purely for the experience. They just want to feel it. They just want to do it for themselves, which is really neat. Eventually, then, of course, naturally, they want to perform it for people, but there is a stage, I gather, where they just want to have the art, do the art.
Right. And wouldn't that be great if we could all get back to that stage, right?
So great. You're just purely for yourself.
Exactly. And to have that notion of like creative play, and that it's okay to be making something just to make, and it doesn't have to like be anything. It doesn't have to be a house, or it doesn't have to be a landscape or a lily pad, or it's just that purely the act of making.
Absolutely. I learned a little bit about that in terms of visual art from a very wonderful children's art teacher named Carol Harris Spicer, who I think is still in the Frederick area. And she taught in the parent-child program through Frederick County. And she called her class Art Experiences. And there were kids as little as 18 months old in the class. And what she said was that this developmental stage of that kind of art, she said the child just wants to see the paint go on the paper. They're not making a thing. They're not interested in the final product. They're just immersed in the experience of seeing the paint go on the paper, or making an impression. I can remember her taking those little berry baskets, plastic berry baskets that you buy fresh berries in sometimes. I don't know if they have them around anymore. And they would make impressions with those. And then sometimes they could sprinkle salt over those, or sand, or whatever, just to have the experience of creating the art. Anyway, Carol was an amazing art teacher, and I really learned a lot about children's art and their processes from her.
And then you took that back into your home and practice those kind of activities, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I remember it was my father's birthday, and Juliana and I were going to meet him for lunch someplace out. And I said, hey, I'm going to go take a shower. Would you like to make Granddad a card or something while I'm in the shower? And she said, okay. And I came back, and she had taken a piece of construction paper. I remember it so clearly, green construction paper, and cut it up into about a jillion tiny pieces. And she'd taken a marker and just put a little mark on each tiny piece. And then she'd put them all in a clear plastic cup and covered it with a paper towel that she rubber banded to the top. And she was like, look what I made for Granddad. And I thought it was really awesome. I was like, wow, that's great. But my father is much more conventional,
Right.
and he did not know what to make of it. I mean, if she had made something on a piece of paper, he would have said, wow, thank you. And he would have put it up, in his office and on his refrigerator or something like that. But he didn't quite know what to make of it. And I just remember saying to him, it's art, Dad. It's your birthday present. And he was like, okay, thank you, Juliana. It's very cute.
Was that supposed to be, was it like, was she making confetti, or did she have a name for what she was doing? Or
she didn't say.
Okay.
Confetti, it actually might have been confetti, now that I think about it. That might have been what she had in mind. But whatever it was just, I made him a present. Yeah. Here it is in a cup. So that was very fun. And then the natural progression comes, and then later she wanted to make representational things, make a picture of Granddad, or a picture of the house, or whatever. But it just was very neat to see her make that progression.
Right. Yeah. And then hopefully they don't get squashed with people's judgments about it. It was great that your dad was still open and thank you. It wasn't like, what is this? Yeah. He might have said it to you, but if it didn't quash her self-confidence in what she was making.
Definitely. We used to have a joke about how you're not supposed to say to a child, what is it? And you're not supposed to say, even, although I did think that at first, I thought this was an okay thing, can you tell me about it? Because I remember saying to him, if she could have told you about it with words, she probably would have. But this isn't a thing she can tell you about. So he said, what am I supposed to say if I'm going to say something? I said, well, you could just say thank you. But also you could just observe. I see you've used a lot of wavy lines in this picture, or I see you've used a lot of blue, in this project. I really like blue. You could say something like that. And so he would joke with me about, looking at going to an art museum. Don't forget to say, I see the artist has used a lot of blue.
But that is good, because I think that is also something that we really need to give our kids. It's the experiences, and it's also the observations, like having space in your life that you can go someplace, even if it's just in your kitchen drawer, to make observations, right? And to develop those skills that can then be used in some manner later.
That is so cool. Yeah, you're totally right. Just observing. That is so right.
Or just to say, so today we're going to go on a walk, and I want you to look for wavy lines, or I want you to look for, the blue things. Let's look for all the blue things, or something like that. Is like,
what a cool idea. Yeah, I love that.
So in this podcast, I've been giving my listeners exercises, and that was one of them. Is like, pick a color, and like in the next week, observe that color, take pictures of it or whatever. You can look in your kitchen, you can look in your closet, you can go out on a walk, you can go someplace, but just to practice those observational skills. And I think the kids need to have that as well.
Very cool. What a cool assignment. I love that.
Yeah. It's fun it's just really does open up your eyes, especially if it's a color that isn't around. Like, well, mostly we have some blue skies, but like right now it'd be hard to find blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right. And red and purple, for the fall, but blue would be kind of hard. So you really have to use those observational skills.
I love that. I'm going to do that, Lisa. What a great idea.
Yeah, it is a fun one. And you talked about that you had a lot of fun doing homemade Play-Doh.
Yes. Yep. We made lots of different recipes of homemade Play-Doh. And one of the things that I eventually figured out was to put a few drops of some soothing essential oil scent into homemade Play-Doh, like lavender or something, and it was, then it kind of magnifies the soothing experience of, a child sitting down at the table to play with Play-Doh. Then it also smells nice, feels nice and it smells nice. Yeah, go ahead.
And I bet homemade, like, I don't like the smell of regular Play-Doh, manufactured Play-Doh. It's awful.
Yeah.
So that would also be so much more pleasurable for everyone to have homemade Play-Doh that also smells great.
Definitely. With pretty colors, and I used to laugh, if I'm missing any kind of kitchen implement, I would kind of roll my eyes. It's either in the bathtub or it's with the Play-Doh toys. She's come out and taken the potato masher or, the measuring cups or whatever and carried them off. I think some families would find it in the sandbox, but we didn't have a sandbox. So for us, it was either a missing kitchen implement. Check the bath toys, check the Play-Doh toys.
That's so cool. And I wonder too, if using the Play-Doh, because Juliana does do a lot of sculpture things with the blacksmithing. I wonder how much using Play-Doh as like an early experience gives kids more of like that sculptural or like three-dimensional kind of sensation or building things that are three-dimensional.
Great thought. Yeah, I actually think that's probably true, because you're experimenting with different, just sort of learning where things are in space, I suppose, is probably the childhood thing that you're learning with Play-Doh is like how do materials exist in space.
Yeah.
She often says, she learned as part of her blacksmith training, she learned welding. And when she says that it's similar, same motions, same kind of same experience as piping decorations onto a cake and using a hot glue gun. Same thing as welding. That you are, well, at least when you're welding a line of something,
right.
Not when you're just attaching things, but you are holding steady pressure while something squirts out the end of your tool, and making a line or whatever you're making with it. And I imagine that some of that came from Play-Doh, probably. Now they say that, yeah. She thinks if you're a good welder, you're probably a good cake decorator, or you could be.
I'd like to see some of those burly welder guys with a decorating
totally.
cake. I think that would be cool.
Totally. I'd like to see that too. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be a great way to enhance experiences for children?
Let's see. I guess I think a whole lot of broad spectrum of, homemade art. Lots of, if you were to do a program yourself at home of encouraging creativity, I would think as many types of media as you can come up with, and then because most of us want to get paints and easels and stuff like that for our kids, which I think is amazing. It's an amazing start, but I would say if there's anything else that you can think of to let children really just experience, to just have the experience of messing around with yarn, say, if they learn to, remember many of us made those pot holders with those little pot holder looms when we were kids, right? But even things that don't produce a pot holder at the end, but if they can, just as many different objects and methods of art creation as you can possibly round up. Pastels, I remember oil pastels being super appealing to me when I was a very little kid. I just loved the way they looked going on paper, and that was really not anything that some friend of my parents gave me a set of oil pastels, and I had never had that experience before. It was just different from markers and crayons.
Right, and just the array of colors, the way that they look in the box, they're just like so gorgeous, right?
Totally, so beautiful. I do recall also one little girl in our original art experiences class who was 2.5 or 3, and one of the things that Carol Harris Spicer had out for the kids were different widths and different colors of paper tape. And they could just put those, just tear them off and put them on the paper, and they just really enjoyed that. But this one little girl was completely unfettered by the paper in front of her. She never used her paper. She came, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks in a row, came to class, and she put on her smock. She had just a couple of big men's shirts. Carol had them around, and the kids would put them on and button them up the back. And she took different colors and widths of paper tape and just wrapped them around her body. Carefully, cautiously, different. And then when the class was over, she'd just take off the smock. That was the end of that. It was definitely experiential art. It was definitely it was like a performance art. That kid, yeah. I was really impressed. Like, wow, that kid is like not connected. Yeah, it was neat. It's very cool to see that she just that was her art every week for 3 or 4 weeks, and then after that she was done with that particular expression. But I was impressed. I'd love to know what that kid's doing. Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's like what is she into dance or dressmaking? Maybe she, a costumer of some sort.
Totally.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Who knows? But it's very neat to observe and to supply, your kids with possibilities, and then to stand back. It's super tempting to say when we're finger painting, here, I'll show you how to make a heart. But I think it really pays off if you resist. If the child is just feeling the paint squish through their fingers, and that's just a really neat feeling, I think it really pays off if you don't kind of jump in and say, I'm going to help you make a ducky or something.
Yes. Well, I talked about that yesterday with Dallas, in that, like, doing, it's not parallel play, but like, doing something together, but yes, not saying I'm going to show you how, but being, you can be kind of a role model or a model. If the child is interested, if you're making a heart, let's say, and they're interested in that, they would be watching how you do it, but you're not showing them or teaching them how to do it.
Totally, because the time will come when they say, how do you make a heart?
Right.
Or I want to make something like you're making. I want to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
And even, thinking about all the different ways that you can art, it's like, I'm thinking, having kids in the kitchen, doing those kind of tasks, alongside of each other, because, cooking is totally creative.
Absolutely.
And spontaneous. I mean, there are some people that follow a recipe, but I'm not one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another excellent place for early creativity. So great. And then they eat the things they've made, and they've had that wonderful experience. Again, it's very like a physical experience of actually getting your hands in the food and touching it, and then there's a whole other sense involved. Then you're tasting it.
Right. And feeling proud that you made it too.
Totally.
Having it, having that joyful experience of doing that.
When I taught kids cooking classes, I mean, I've been talking a lot about toddlers, but much older kids, teaching kids cooking classes by middle school. I would always say, so we're going to talk about knife safety and washing your hands and stuff like that. But aside from safety, there's 2 rules in my classroom. And they are no saying yuck or anything like yuck. Don't eat anything you don't want to eat, but I don't want to hear, ew, that's disgusting, or makes me throw up, or anything like that. Feel free to not eat it, but no saying yuck. And also, you can taste anything we're making. And sometimes I would say to the kids now, when I say that, do I mean you can taste the chocolate chips? And a lot of times kids would go, no. And I'd go, sure, you can taste the chocolate chips. You can taste anything. And I would inevitably get a kid who wanted to taste, the baking soda and the, and the vanilla, and having the experience of tasting, things that turn out to taste terrible. But they wanted to taste everything. So go for it.
Right. And you need to have those things in your dish, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a reason for those things to be in there. So, yeah, the art and the science of cooking, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's been so great to talk to you. Thanks for your time, and give Juliana a big hug for me.
I sure will. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and chat, Lisa. This is terrific.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
So wasn't that a great conversation? I just love to hear all those different ways to bring creativity out in kids. And so here's your creative exercise for this week. And it's called a jar of stuff. This time I'm suggesting that you put a jar of pens or pencils or crayons or markers, things to use on your table or somewhere that your family congregates, whether that's at your kitchen table, your dining room table, your coffee table, in your den. And so putting the things that can make marks and paper for spontaneous drawings or writings or lists or poems or those kind of things is really inspiring and can bring out the idea that you can create at any the spirit of creation may come upon you at any time, and to have these things available within reach is really a great thing. So just having supplies out and available can make it just so much easier to reach your creative spirit and those of your kids. And so until next time, I wanted to let you know that you can reach Annie and her wonderful catering company on Facebook and Instagram at Veggie Annie, VeggieAnnie. Do follow her. She has great pictures of sumptuous food, and she does weekly delivered meals that, oh, they are so good and so healthy too. So do follow her at Veggie Annie on Facebook or Instagram. And as always, I would love for you to let me know how these exercises are going for you. You can leave a comment, you can leave a voicemail, and next time we'll have more conversations about raising creative kids. And until then, happy making.